It's make or break for Sam Pittman and company as he enters year number 5 in the University of Arkansas. This is it for him, and this could be a year that can either make Arkansas back to relevancy, back to a January 1st bowl, or it could be the end of an era for Sam Pittman and company. And joining me to discuss everything Arkansas Razorback football is the co-host of the Morning Rush over in Arkansas territory. You can catch him 6 to 9 Central, Monday through Friday. It's Ty Richardson. Ty, what's going on, man?
Lucas, good to be here, man. Big year for Sam Pittman. He's been boisterous about that. Other assistant coaches know what's on the line. They don't get it done. They're probably going to be looking for new jobs. No one wants that. Hoping things change after a season not for the history books, one that you definitely want to forget. 4-8 and 5 single-digit score losses, which was just heartbreaking at times for this football program.
Yeah, it seemed like the mantra of the last 2 years is just not being able to finish the big one. And it seems like going into this year, this is it for them. If they don't come up with something quick, either Pittman may be fired before we get to November. Is this a possibility if you get off to a slow start? Because I know in his contract, it says something about him either going below 500 and Arkansas could settle for a buyout.
Yeah, I think you can't really rule anything out or throw anything off the table when it comes to college athletics nowadays. I think for Sam Pittman, you have 5 straight games the first lead off the season in 5 different venues. You don't play a home SEC game till October. The schedule's not doing you any favors. That being said, it's the SEC. You know what you signed up for. You got to go win some football games. And to add on all the SEC schedule they have to face, and arguably the second or third toughest schedule in college football, you also have to travel to Stillwater, Oklahoma, Boone Pickens Stadium in week number 2, which I expect the Cowboys to be playing for the Big 12 championship in Jerry World, Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium at the beginning of December. So it's just tough, and I mean, they know what's at stake, and hopefully they play and they coach like it this year.
This could be the Yak coach defense that we could be seeing for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Coach Travis Williams has really elevated this defense to new heights. Last year made a big leap forward, going from 124th in total defense in 22 to a top 50 defense in all of college football. Is this all hype from his rap song that he made the other week? Or is this defense for real?
T-Will's done a really good job in just years, gotten a couple big-time commitments to campus. Deke Adams, their defensive line coach, has been really, really on point these last few weeks and months with a couple high-caliber recruits out of state. There's talent there, and you got to give those guys credit because they did not get any help from the offense last season. There was just so many times they could have given up, let go of the rope on the road specifically, and they didn't. Now at home, against Auburn and Missouri, they did let go of the rope, and it was hard to watch at times. But I think in year 2, there's cautious optimism that the defense could be even better. Now, they got to replace a lot. They got to replace some linebackers. They got to replace some defensive guys up front. Back in, a couple guys entered the portal and ended up graduating. So it's just the realm of college football we live in. There's so many new faces that you have to account for nowadays, and if Travis Williams can get these guys playing like they were last year, then you'll have a decent defense. And if the offense is better, Lucas, they'll be a bowl-eligible team, in my opinion.
Let's talk about the offense for a little bit as Bobby Petrino comes back to Fayetteville for the first time since 2011, whenever he left in shambles after that infamous bike accident that he had. I'm sure that's still fresh in a lot of people's minds. Has people forgiven him for that, or is it still kind of fresh?
It's fresh. He will be forgiven if the offense is really good this fall. I mean, not necessarily by the staff or some of the people that were worked for him or under him that were fired, but I think collectively the Arkansas fan base is willing to forgive him, but only under one condition, that they win football games and that his offense is potent and puts up points. They don't do that, then they're just going to hold that over his head probably for the rest of his life. And they're going to say, well, you wrecked us then and you wrecked us now. I don't know if that's necessarily fair to do, but in college sports, fans' thoughts and opinions aren't always fair. And I hope that he's like it's a resolution. It's trying to fix what you wrecked back in the day. And in Arkansas fans' minds, he can do that by, again, winning some football games, scoring some points.
Yeah, you looked at this Texas A&M offense last year, and they really they were severely underrated. They put up a good bit of points last year, but against tight defenses like Alabama's, like Ole Miss's, like Tennessee's, just wasn't able to get the job done at the end of the day. And you expect this year to be a lot better for Arkansas. But Bobby Petrino hasn't really worked with an option quarterback since he had Lamar Jackson back at Louisville. I'm not saying that Taylor Green possesses the same thing as what Lamar Jackson had at Louisville. But the biggest thing that I want to see Taylor Green work on is his passing accuracy. Had 57% completion rate, 11 touchdowns to 9 interceptions as well, but also added 9 touchdowns on the ground as well. Now, to be fair, Boise State never had the best offensive line in the Mountain West. That's why, I mean, he took a lot of hits whenever he was there. He had to scramble a lot. That's why he had so many rushing yards. Is Bobby Petrino trying to elevate his game more to be a pro-style quarterback, or is he going to let him work like he did last year at Boise State?
I think Petrino is trying to best fit his offense, what ultimately serves his quarterback, and giving Taylor Green options, not just to throw the football, but run. I think a lot of times when we see a kid that can run, white, black, whoever, we just assume, oh, he can't pass. And you don't necessarily equate a guy who's athletic to being a pure passer. Taylor, he's got some issues that he needs to work on like every other quarterback in college football. But Bobby Petrino is going to put him in the best positions possible to be successful in his offense. There's some things that he'll be able to do. There's some things that he'll be able to do better than some of his previous quarterbacks. I'm not necessarily citing Lamar Jackson, a Heisman Trophy winner and an NFL MVP, but I mean, Taylor's all 6'6", 6'7". He's got 4'6", 4'7" speed, has a cannon, and has some leadership qualities. The question is he going to get enough block? And Lucas, does he have the skill position players around him to make plays? At times last season, those guys didn't get open. They're all back under a year under their belts in the Southeastern Conference. Does that give them enough momentum to be much better than they were in 2023? You would think so, but it is a new offense that they're having to learn, and a lot of new pieces that they're having to feature outside the skill positions.
Yeah, when you look at their skill positions, the biggest one that I see is Andrew Armstrong. And I got to watch Andrew whenever he was at Texas A&M Commerce, and he just absolutely lit up the Southland Conference, had over 1,000 yards receiving, and I personally got to watch him torture the Southeastern Lions defense because I'm a student there. And unfortunately, I got to see him just absolutely light it up. But last year, he was basically the primary target this year. Now you bring back a guy like Luke Hasz, who has big play capabilities. He's going to be utilized a lot more than just a tight end. He's going to be I would expect him to be used a good bit in the slot as well because, I mean, yeah, he may be 242 pounds, but this guy has some wheels for a tight end.
Andrew is awesome. We'll start there and we'll tackle Luke Hasz. Andrew's awesome, man. I like that kid from the moment I started watching him. You will go back and watch last season. He beats his quarterback or his safety or linebacker, whoever's guarding him almost every time. The offensive line and quarterback didn't always necessarily find him. I think if him and Taylor seem to be like this, two Texas kids, they kind of joked a little bit. One's from Louisville. I forget where, you mentioned him playing at Commerce. I forget where Andrew's actually from. Maybe it's Carrollton. But they have somewhat of a chemistry, which is really cool. And I think Andrew might go over 1,000 yards. That's kind of my hot take this offseason, as Arkansas's only had 4 1,000-yard wide receivers. I think he could be the 5th. Not necessarily because he's as good as the other 4, but I just like the idea of those two really being really on the same wavelength. And in terms of Luke Hasz, he gets injured, I think, 4 games in the last season, maybe 5. I think it was the Ole Miss game he goes down. Collarbone issue, out for the year. But a tremendous game in Death Valley, Baton Rouge at night. That was awesome for him to do what he did as a true freshman. There's not many kids that would have the stones to pull off what he did during the course of that football game. And you get Ty Washington back, And you also get Marquise Gumbs back, who had some success in North Texas. So you like that tight end position, but you have to start with Lucas because he's one of the best in college football, even as a sophomore, Lucas.
Yeah, and despite him being injured and despite him putting up 100 against one of the worst defenses in college football, I mean, he's doing it on an SEC caliber level. I mean, this is a guy that I have him potentially being the best tight end in the SEC if he stays healthy. Right now, I have him at, I have him top 5 in my top 10 tight ends list in the SEC. But he is going to elevate his game a lot further. When you get an athletic quarterback like Green and you add a lot of weapons around him and a lot of supporting cast, this should be a better offensive line as well. That should give Taylon Green a lot more, patience and a lot more time in the pocket. And when you get him and Has together, this is a guy that I think has all of the intangibles in the world to be an NFL type tight end at the end of the day. And by the way, Andrew is from Dallas.
Okay, Dallas, yeah. And there's no Brock Bowers in the league this year. That was the alpha dog last couple years. He's gone off to the NFL. So there is kind of I would say a gap, but there is a question. It's like, who's the alpha dog in this group? And Luke's definitely going to throw his name in there. There's plenty of other guys that have chance considering they played SEC schools, but you can't really start that conversation, or at least have that conversation about best SEC tight end without mentioning Luke Has.
And I'm looking at Arkansas's offense. They run the power spread, and that kind of reminds me of what Petrino ran in 06 when you had Brian Brom and you had Harry Douglas. You didn't have Michael. You had Michael Bush at the beginning of the year until he got injured. But if you look at that offense, they put up a lot of points in the Big East. You got into shootouts with West Virginia, with Rutgers, with UConn, with a lot of big-time offenses in the Big East. And that was just one of the most explosive offenses that you would have seen back then. They really revolutionized college football at that time, especially that made the Big East very popular in terms of college football. And when he brings that to Arkansas right now, when you get a quarterback, now Taylon Green, again, he's not Brian Brom. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Teddy Bridgewater. He's not Ryan Mallett. But he has the intangibles of being what could be a breakout year for him, and one that really a lot of teams are not really paying attention to. This guy's 6'6", 230 pounds. And I think he might have been the same weight as KJ last year, or maybe KJ might have been a little bit bigger. But when you look at him, how has he improved so far when you've evaluated him in fall camp?
I think for Taylon, it's just all about getting used to his offense and teammates. And he's been here for, I think, 6 months now, and just got to keep adjusting. I mean, you mentioned the difference between playing at Boise State and the SEC earlier. That's it's a canyon of a difference. Some of the other quarterbacks that you mentioned that played for Bobby Petrino, I remember the height of the Big East football, which is several of those teams. You had Ray Rice at Rutgers. You had Brian Brom, like you said, at Louisville. South Florida had some good squads back then. That was fun. I miss that Big East football.
Hey, don't forget about the Pat White, Steve Slayton duo.
Yeah, Noel Devine. That was quite a team in Morgantown that year or two. They were going to the national championship if it weren't for Pittsburgh, and they're upsetting them. That I think it was like 13-3. Paul Rhodes manned that defense. But back to the thing about the quarterback situation, I think it's just comfortability for Taylor. Anytime you walk into a new campus, you've got new coaches, you've got new teammates, you've got a new playbook. It's an adjustment. And I'm just hoping he's a smart kid and can adjust to it quick, because SEC ain't gonna wait on you. You better strap him up that Week 4 game against Auburn, or it could get ugly real quick. And honestly, it's not even Week 4; it's Week 2 when you play to Oklahoma State and Stillwater, Lucas.
Looking at Arkansas' schedule this year: Arkansas and Pine Bluff, Oklahoma State, UAB, Auburn, and Texas A&M. September could be the definer for this Arkansas team. To me, if you don't start off at least 3-2 on the year, it's not looking good whenever you get to October. And by the time, even before you get to that Ole Miss game, I do believe Sam Pittman will be fired before then, just because of the buyout clause and how much money Arkansas will save if they have to wait till the end of the year. But there is another scenario that could see them go 3-2, steal a win against either Mississippi State, maybe LSU is not at their best as they have been the last 2 years when they played Arkansas, and it's gotten to some very close games. But if the Arkansas offense picks up, they could steal an upset against LSU. And now you're going into November, I believe, either 4-3 or 5-2, and you're looking at what could be at least one more win, and you get a bowl game. So do you see that potentially happening, or do you think Pittman's reign will be done before November?
I think you set it up. I mean, you want to be 3-2. Heck, you could be 4. You want to be 4-1, quite honestly, heading into that Tennessee game, the first SEC game in October. Then you get the bye. Then you get LSU. There are some points in the schedule where you're like, all right, this isn't bad. Like, you don't have Georgia, you don't have Alabama, but you have Texas and Quinn Ewers. You've got other hostile teams. I'm curious how Nussmeier is at LSU coming to town after Arkansas's bye. There's a lot of slip-ups on this schedule, but as you alluded to, Lucas, you got to start strong or the snowball could really pile up on Sam Pittman. He might not be able to get out of the way of time if a decision was made on his future at Arkansas midseason.
So let's go back and talk about the defense as well. Let's talk about Landon Jackson for a little bit, who could be arguably the best defensive lineman at the end of the year in the SEC. The biggest thing that I have on him is that he has to be consistent. He had a great game against Alabama in that offensive line. And when you're going up against 2 first-round tackles last year. But now it seemed like the rest of the year was kind of quiet for him. But he was still, and that may be alluded to how Arkansas was last year. But at the same time, this is a guy that's been getting a lot of attention from NFL scouts, could be a first-round draft pick. This guy's 6'7", 280-plus pounds. And when you put him anywhere on the edge, I mean, he's going to make a play. Do you think consistency, however, is his biggest problem? I mean, what does he need to do to really elevate his game and be a consistent difference maker for Coach T. Will's defense?
Well, yeah, he mentioned consistency in the offseason. He mentioned developing another pass rushing move, being more effective in the run game. He needs some help. I mean, you watch a lot of those games last year. He's getting double teamed. He's getting chipped. And best player that usually happens to. But there's got to be some other guys in those gaps in the one-on-one situations that can take advantage because Landon's not always going to be able to. You mentioned the Alabama game where he was a one-man wrecking crew. That was one of the single best games I've ever watched from a defensive player. And you're just hoping he can be that first-round equivalent type of guy because if he is, Arkansas is going to have one guy on their defense that can single-handedly wreck the opposing offense's plans during the course of a game. And have that guy, it changes the entire complexity of not just a game, but in some cases a season.
Ty Richardson joining us here on SEC Unfiltered, the co-host of the Morning Rush. You can find him anywhere on Arkansas Game Day, as well as the Hog Reaction over at hitthatline.com. Want to go ahead and give a shout out to our good sponsor, MyBookie.ag. Go on over to MyBookie.ag and use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Ty, I believe you guys' Razorbacks are a plus 40,000 to win the SEC. And speaking of MyBookie, they're a plus 2.5. Their over-under is, I think, 2.5 on the SEC wins. Do you think that, do you pick the over or the under on that one?
2.5. So they get one at home, one on the road. I mean, you got 3 non-cons you'll win. You're not winning. I don't think you'll beat Oklahoma State. You'll win at least one at home. You'll probably win that Mississippi State game. You got A&M or one of the other home games, which is Tennessee, LSU, and Texas. I would probably take 3. I would take the over. I have them right around 5 or 6 wins. I feel like I go back and forth every day, but I would take the over at 3. I wouldn't go to 4. I'd take it at 3. And that's pushing it, to be honest, right. Lucas.
Don't shoot us if you guys decide to listen to us. We are not betting experts, just FYI. But go on over to mybookie.ag, use code SECU, get yourself a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Not available in all states, must be 21 years or older to use. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-GAMBLER. A couple of more questions for you before we let you go, Ty. Let's talk about the running backs. Landon Jackson coming in from Utah. Rushed for almost 800 yards to go along with 4 scores. didn't really have, kind of went under the radar when it came to Pac-12 top running backs, especially when you look at the overall strength of the Pac-12, which is the passing game. This is a guy that averaged close to 5 yards a carry. So far, how has he been in fall camp?
Well, I think he's going to be the first team running back, and it says a lot about a kid that comes over, originally went to Texas, quarterback, transfers to Utah, running back, and he's gotten frustrated, I think, a little bit in the offseason with this idea that he's banged up or injury prone, also can't catch. So he's trying to do two things: play a healthy season and show that he's not just a running back, that he's good out of the backfield and various other parts of his game. So I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and you always love seeing that with a player. And I hesitate to say young player because he's not that young, Lucas.
Do you think that, I know this is kind of a stretch, but do you think that, since you mentioned he was a quarterback as well whenever he went to Texas, could we see a little bit of the wild hog like we saw with Darren McFadden and company?
I know fans would love it. I mean, I've contemplated the idea of them running not a flea flicker, but a halfback pass and various other things where they line him up in unique situations and he's able to throw the football. I mean, if you're a defensive coordinator, that always has to be in the back of your head, the fact that he does have that in his arsenal and his background. And so I think Bobby Petrino, I mean, he's a smart guy. I think he's going to try and utilize it. You won't see it against, let's say, UAB or UAPB or a lesser team, but you might see it in a unique situation coming up against an SEC opponent. You never know with BP, Lucas.
Yeah, Bobby Petrino always has tricks up his sleeve, especially over the past couple of years since he's been around the game of college football. It's always nothing new to see a couple of tricks up his sleeve, a couple of trick plays coming. He utilizes it very well in his offenses. Last question for you as we enter the 2024 season. Overall, when you look at this Arkansas team, what is the biggest thing that need to focus as we are less than 2 weeks or just over 2 weeks away from the start of college football season?
I would say just how they close out close games. And they could do it the exact same way last year and flounder and not make a bowl game. Or do they get lucky? Because, Lucas, there wasn't an ounce of luck that went the Arkansas Razorbacks' way last year, and that was brutal. So do they have things go their way? 3 years ago, they had a lot of things go their way. Last year, they didn't. And that's kind of how college football works sometimes. So that's not exactly a prototypical analytical answer per se, or like nitty-gritty blood and guts that you want. But I think that's what a lot of Arkansas fans want to know. It's like, are they going to get some breaks? Because didn't happen last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anybody really expects a blood and guts type of response. I mean, it's all about just closing the deal and just getting yourself into a position to where you can get back to a bowl game and keep this program afloat. Because I think if Sam Pittman's gone, your athletic director is gone as well. So we'll just have to see what happens as the season goes on. Ty Richardson, the co-host of the Morning Rush, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, over at ESPN Arkansas. Where can we find you on Twitter, son?
At Ty Sports Radio on Twitter. Our Twitter for our station is at Hit That Line AR. So if you enjoy Arkansas Razorbacks content or just SEC content, we're there. And again, you work with one of the best, and our boy Chris Phillips. So happy to always join you guys. Chris is the man. You're the man, Lucas.
Hey, Ty, we appreciate your time, man. We'll talk soon, and let's have a great start to college football season.
All right, can't wait, man. Appreciate it.